Hi family and friends. I've been getting a few questions about making homemade tortillas, so I'm here to give you a step-by-step on how to make them. We're going to start by getting all of our ingredients together. We're going to need 2 cups of flour for the recipe, plus a little extra to dust your workspace. Salt, super important, we'll need 2 teaspoons of that, and half a teaspoon of baking powder. A 1/4 cup of a soft fat, or 3 tablespoons of a liquid fat, we'll get a little bit into that later, and 2/3 cup of warm water. I'm going to put all my dry ingredients in a bowl. For the flour, you can use all-purpose or bread flour, it's entirely up to you. I personally prefer bread flour, it makes it a little more chewy, but whatever's in your cupboard works. I'm going to put my fat on top, and I'm going to cut it into my dry ingredients by hand. If you have a mixer, that's awesome. Just put these ingredients into your bowl with the paddle attachment and let it go on speed 1. If you don't, just cut it in like this. We're going to pinch our fats into the flour until the flour gets mealy. You'll notice your flour almost changes color the further the fat gets incorporated. I personally am using a mix of bacon fat and lard. I made bacon about 2 days ago and I saved this yummy liquid gold, and I had lard in the fridge from a different project. Other soft fats you can use are vegetable shortening or softened butter, but you use what you have. The world is your oyster. Or you can even forego all of these soft fats and go for a liquid fat instead, like oil. Again, any oil you have on hand. If you're doing that, you're going to want 3 tablespoons of said oil. Your mixing method will be just a little bit different, but I'll get to that in a moment. Fair warning, certain fats and oils have strong flavors and it will translate into your tortillas. Coconut oil, for example, but use what you feel comfortable with. Have fun with it. So since we're cutting in our soft fat, we're going to want to get to this stage before we add water. There are no large chunks of fat visible, and it's pretty well incorporated into our flour. From here, we can start pouring in our warm water and stirring with a spatula. I like to put a little towel under my bowl though, so my bowl doesn't run away from me. If you're using oil in place of other fats, then this is where you add it in. You skip the previous step entirely, you can add it into your water, and now we're gonna stream it in. Oops, spilled a little. So you'll notice that I can only get so far with a spatula, and at this point, I'm gonna get my hands a little bit dirty. What you're gonna wanna do is pick up your dough, you're gonna feel to see where your dry and wet spots are. You're going to take your wet spots and use it to adhere to any dry spots that are left over. You can see here a dusting of flour and fat that's kind of hanging out. So I want to make sure that that all gets incorporated. I'm putting pressure on it with my hand, I'm folding the dough over on itself, and I'm repeating as needed. So now we've got this uniform mass. So I'm going to go ahead and dust my work surface with some flour. Then you're going to drop your dough. We're going to do a little bit of kneading. So we're going to dust our hands with some flour that we have here on reserve, and we're going to use the heel of our hands to push the dough away from us, then use the tips of your fingers to fold it back onto itself. We're developing our gluten. Be gentle but firm. You got this. So we're going to do this for about 2 minutes. As I'm working, I'm taking a look at my dough, checking out for dry spots, wet spots, just making sure that everything is nice and homogenized. We're looking for that Goldilocks effect. Everything is perfectly incorporated throughout. All right, now that we've got our workout in, we're going to divide our dough into 8 pieces. If you have a scale, you can be a little bit more precise. The rounds should come out to 2.3 ounces each, or somewhere in that ballpark. If you don't have a scale, that's totally fine. We're just gonna eyeball it. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm cutting my cute little dough ball right in half. We're gonna take each half and stretch it out a little bit so I can get a better weight distribution. Each half I will cut in half, there as best as I can. And then each half I'm going to kind of cut more into a 1/3, 2/3 kind of cut. You can see that the ends taper off a little bit, so we're losing mass there. So we're going to account for that by cutting a little bit closer towards the center. Now that I have my 8 portions, I'm going to roll them into balls. I'll take my little portion, flip it over, press it down a little bit, tuck in its little corners in the center, and pinch. Flip her right around again, and then I'm going to use my hands to roll. So I'm using the outside line of my hand from the pinky to the base of my thumb to place pressure on my dough ball. As I move in a circular motion, I'm rotating the dough, I'm kind of tucking it in on itself as it goes. I'm pushing out and tucking back in, using that part of my hand. Or you can say fuck it and roll it right in between your hands. No harm, no foul. If you choose to do the first option, it's just going to give you a tighter circle. It will help a little bit more when you're rolling out. So I'm going to lightly flour a plate of mine and place these little guys in there. I'm going to get a wet paper towel and place that on top of the sleeping babies, and now we wait. 20 minutes to be exact. Why? Good question. Remember the kneading process? We were developing gluten. So what is gluten exactly? Well, there are proteins in wheat flour and a few other cereal grains that, when wet and agitated, create gluten. The strength of your gluten depends on the protein content in your flour and how much you work your dough or batters. It helps to think of gluten kind of like a rubber band. This is your gluten in pancakes. It's wet, barely agitated, so there's really no network that's been built. Now, when we're kneading our tortilla dough, we build up this gluten network. When you do that, your elastic network gets all wound up and balled up tight, so when you go to stretch it, there's not much give. That's why the 20 minutes is super important. We built up our gluten, giving our tortilla structure, but now we gotta relax those strands a little bit so we got a little bit more give. If we don't, our tortillas are gonna have a really hard time rolling. They're gonna keep shrinking back on us, and they'll turn out too chewy. Like, not in a good way chewy. So a little patience is key. Congratulations! We made it past 20 minutes! Woohoo! So now that we're all well and rested, we're going to roll out our dough. We're gonna dust that work surface with flour again, place our dough ball down, press it down a little bit, and dust that top with flour. Here I have my handy dandy baby rolling pin. Should you not have a rolling pin at home, that's totally okay. An empty wine bottle will do just fine, or even a reusable water bottle. There's a whole world and cabinet of solutions, as long as it's a really nice even cylinder thing going on. We're gonna roll these out into circles, ideally 9 inches, but really, who cares? Live a little. The most important thing is to get these as thin as possible and roll them out as evenly as possible. The best way to do that is to place your rolling pin in the center of your little circle and push it away from you in short, quick strokes. Then back to the middle, then roll towards yourself. Take your dough and rotate about 45 degrees and do it all again. As you get further along in the process, you can adjust where you roll and how you rotate to best help you achieve that thin and even tortilla. Word to the wise though, do not under any circumstances ball up your dough again and re-roll. That will make your dough go past extra chewy into the tough category, and no one wants a tough tortilla. Just love your little misshaped round for the beautiful thing it is. We're gonna wanna place some foil or wax paper in between your tortillas as you let them hang out. Or if at this point you say to yourself, whoa, I can't possibly eat 8 tortillas right away. You can stick as many as you like with their little protective barrier, of course, into a zip top bag and tuck into your freezer. Just make sure that they're nice and flat. Once you're all rolled out, we're going to take a large pan, cast iron skillet, any large pan you have on hand. We're going to put it on medium heat. Once the pan is nice and hot, we can take our rolled out tortilla and set her down gently and let her hang out. It will take anywhere from 40 seconds to 1 minute to 2 minutes, depending on how well done you want it, depending on the size of your burner, depending on how thick your pan is. The point is there's a lot of factors, and this is the part where you have to listen to your heart and trust your senses. Once there's some brown blistering on the underside of your tortilla, she's ready to be flipped over. Use tongs, use a fork, use a spatula, or if you have no feelings in your fingertips like me, just use those. Let that other side toast up to your liking, remembering that your tortillas will continue cooking a little bit even when they're out of the pan. But above all, don't be afraid of a little brown. Once your first guy is out, place a nice clean towel on top to keep that steam in. Repeat for the remaining. Enjoy these however the heck you want. My personal favorite is as a vessel for leftovers. Mix and match however your heart desires. If you're anything like me and don't like throwing things out, I did save my wax papers. I'm just gonna roll them up and save them for the next time I make tortillas or any other project I might need them for. Now you get to eat them! Yay! And you made the best tortillas in the whole wide world. Congratulations. Hypothetically, let's say you have leftovers. What are we gonna do? We're gonna wanna place them in a zip top bag and keep them in the fridge. They're only gonna last about 24 hours that way. You can reheat them in the microwave with a wet paper towel over them for about 30 seconds apiece. Or, my personal favorite, I will wrap them up in a clean towel and let them stale on my kitchen counter until the next day, at which point I am going to cut them up into little triangles, drizzle them with oil and salt, and tuck them into a 375-degree oven until they're toasty. Then I make nachos. But that's just one girl's preference. The choice, after all, is really yours. Well, enjoy, and I'll see you soon.